Kipchumba, on this issue of KPMG, in as much as there are those who are arguing that, you see, Wafula Chebukati still presided over an election that the Supreme Court itself nullified. So there was a failure on his side at that point.
I think
are those valid concerns?
What is important to note with our election cycle since actually we got our independence is the issue that we have always had the offense, but we have never had the offender. Elections are annulled in court. These are the offenses that led to the annulment, but nobody is held accountable in terms of the election officials. And I'm hoping that the disputes that will arise from the 9th August election, for the first time we will have offenders also being put in. Because, Trevor, we have to be fair to Kenyans. It is their money being used to repeat elections. It is their money being used to litigate elections. Why, for example, do we say in this constituency there was voter bribery, what have you, but nobody will be found culpable. So we have an offense without an offender. Going back to the issue of the KPMG report, I think, again, we are falling in the trap of trying to drag the credibility of IEBC through the mud. If IEBC or if a political party wants IEBC to table the KPMG report, what I think should be done is write to IEBC. We have attended meetings where the in those presidential election arrangement meetings, and some of these things have been raised there. There is a whole way of how communication should be done between presidential candidates, their agents, and within political parties. So I think the question of KPMG report should just be addressed to the IEBC. If Azimio, for example, want the report, they should write to IEBC. If Kenya Kwanza, we want the report, we will write to IEBC. So at the end of the day, it might not be made public for everyone, but at least the political parties know the report. Yeah. And then again, where do you make it public? If we have not seen, if the gazettement has not happened for candidates, where will you put the report?
Okay.
That is the other question.
You know, Trevor, I'm getting a bit worried here. For the first time on an interview panel, Kenya Kwanza and Azimio are actually in agreement on most issues. On this Chebukati issue, what he said is very important. The IEBC should have been forced to resign, the entire commissioners, after bungling the 2017 elections. In any organization, when an entire management team fails on such a critical mission, they have to go. That is the issue that we should be discussing today to make sure it doesn't happen again in future. If they failed us in 2017, why is the same team being allowed to continue to run the next election? I mean, look at Boris Johnson today being forced to resign because he failed the system, he failed his party, and they tell him go.
Yeah, so then it's not a side show from the independent presidential candidates, because that's what they're asking for.
You see. No, this is a different issue. Yeah. We're not talking about an individual here. We're talking about a process. And the process is, if you are supervising an election that was ruled as
null and void,
yeah, we cannot trust you to run another election again. Okay. It is at that point in time that we should have made a whole cleanup, and not 1 month before the elections.
Okay.
You see, I have nothing personal pro or against Chebukati. I'm looking at the concept of management. You do not change the chief manager just before you reach a critical point. It doesn't make sense.
All right. Mark?
On the KPMG report, let me start there. Were public funds used to make this report? The answer is yes. Is it auditing a public issue? Yes, it is. Is the matter in question a state secret? No, it's not. No one should have to beg IEBC in whatever shape, way, or form for them to make public the report of KPMG. Why? Because when you look at the voter register itself, isn't it public? Is it the number of voters, the number of people registered, isn't it public? So why is the report about a public function being held a secret? And these are part of the failures that IEBC has made, and we've all identified here that they are not communicating effectively.
Yeah.
Because the moment you do not release that report, we have to ask ourselves what indeed is so wrong in that audit that you do not want the public to know.
Yeah.
And indeed, if there are wrong things in that audit, then you should tell the public, you know what, we found 1.2 million voters that are wrongly registered or dead voters or whatever it is that you found, and we're taking steps A, B, C, D to mitigate against them. Because I assure you, if there are significant issues in that KPMG report that have not seen the light of day, I promise you during a petition, whether it is presidential or gubernatorial, whatever it will be, the issues in that audit will be brought to the fore, and it will be very strong evidence against the IEBC. Yeah. And these are the mistakes that the same Chebukati made in 2017 that he wants to repeat now. Elections must not only be transparent, but they must also be deemed to be transparent. They must be seen on the face of it to be transparent. So for me, in fact, I say this without batting an eyelid, we made a big mistake not allowing Chebukati and his team to go home in 2017. And why do I say this? Because we are seeing the same level of impunity continue. And the biggest show of impunity is when you're holding a public document in your drawer and not giving it to people. Kwani who paid for it? Is it Chebukati Incorporated only that paid for it? No, it's not IEBC that got its own money walichanga kwa ofisi 10 bob to do it. It is our money that was used to do it.
Yeah.
That document does not even belong to IEBC. It belongs to the people of the Republic of Kenya. And as the people of Kenya, we don't need to write to IEBC to give them to give us public documents. No. And that's why I disagree with Kipchumba. Kipchumba, don't write. They should give it to us free. It should be a supplement in the paper, okay, so we can read it for free.
Hesbon, do you agree with this issue around the KPMG audit report? They did mention, though, preliminarily, that they did find a few issues. Some voters were deceased, about 460-something thousand, about some of them who used duplicate IDs that were not theirs, about 1.2 million. But they did give a preliminary report.
Yeah, well, I think, IEBC is in a very difficult situation, where anything that goes to the public is interpreted in a very, political way. And I think that's the fear they have, because from where I sit, and in any organization, an audit raises exceptions. An audit does not indict. Essentially, an audit is a very constructive process. It's supposed to help an institution understand where they have gaps and address them. And you only have a problem if an audit raises something that you cannot explain and you don't have the wherewithal to address.
Yeah.
And I think just from a communication point of view, and I agree with my colleagues here, that it's not really a problem of IEBC not communicating. It's just a systemic problem within IEBC with their communication in such a manner that instills confidence in the public. Yeah. Because, what Kipchumba is saying is the truth. We don't have evidence here that they've refused, people to access that document, because no government institution can, stop people from accessing any information. It's captured in Article 35 of the Constitution. But still, there is no mechanism for providing that information. Where do they put it, So IEBC has to be very enterprising enough to find a way of knowing that because this report has raised certain exceptions, then we need to be proactive enough. Before politicians go to podiums and say it has not released, they need to be proactive enough to find a way of sharing that information. And I think that is where IEBC has a problem. The fear that, an audit, raises issues does not necessarily mean that IEBC has a problem, but it means IEBC has something to do. Okay. And I think from where I sit, IEBC needs to come out and say, these are the things that have been raised by the KPMG report, and this is exactly what we are doing, so that we evaluate IEBC on how they are responding to the exceptions that have been raised in that audit. Okay. But ultimately, I think it's not just a question of the KPMG report and what IEBC is doing and what IEBC is not doing. There is also a trend by politicians, which we also have to call out, to just politicize almost everything. There are things that the political stakeholders can easily have a conversation around, so that they don't put it in the minds of the public that IEBC does not have what it takes to run an election. And you see, there is a side of both sides of the political. You hear politicians talk in such a manner that is preparing the people to say no to the, you know, the electoral
Results.
process,
Yeah.
which is not a good space to find ourselves in. And that's why IEBC has to come out clearly and be at the top and the cutting edge of everything that is happening, so that they are at the forefront of letting the public know this is what we are doing, and not politicians.
All right.